Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Suno Tonight with Saadia Afzaal. We are back with another episode of our series Islam and the Modern World. Today's major conflicts represents failure of diplomacy. Given the scale of the turmoil shaking the world, in particular in Ukraine and the Middle East, the potential for a spark that ignites World War III already exists. Last few weeks' events added fuel to the existing battlefields. First, with the assassination of Hamas's political chief, Ismail Haniyeh, Iran blamed Israel for the death and vowed to respond to the killing with power and decisiveness. Tehran's threats of a further escalation mean the risk of a full-scale regional war is rising, and with the potential for a single miscalculation to ignite a deeper and more unmanageable conflict. After the assassination of Palestinian leader, Russia's security links with Iran started to grow stronger. Moscow and Tehran see Israel and Ukraine wars indelibly linked. Recently, Russian Secretary of the Security Council and former Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu was in Tehran, and transfer reports of Russian Iskander short-range ballistic missile systems and Murmansk B-1 electronic warfare systems to Iran broke out. These systems carry ability to fire conventional or nuclear warheads. There is a possibility of transferring Russian Su-35 fighter jets, which indicates that the Russian technology will help Iran to engage other regional players in a big way. In the past, Russia kept a distance from the happenings of the Middle East. But after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Iran has provided Russia with a large number of powerful ballistic missiles, including Fateh 110 family of short-range ballistic weapons that Moscow has successfully used in Ukraine war. Moreover, in August 2022, Iran transferred attack and surveillance drones to Russia. And since that time, Moscow's been deploying Iranian drones against Ukrainian targets. Russian defense moves indicate that Russia has fully entered into the Middle East war zone arena by providing and committing its advanced weapons, and Moscow knows very well that weapons will be used against Israel or the US in case a war broke in the region. Russia-Ukraine war, the second major conflict zone, is already heating up and ready to blow. In the last 2 weeks, we have seen massive build-up, and Ukraine's Kursk incursion is a major blow to Putin's authority since February 2022. Washington Post in its report disclosed that during the invasion, 28 villages were captured and at least 2,000 Russians are missing in the territory taken by Ukraine. After the Ukrainian incursion into Russian territory, Russia warns that the world is on the brink of a third world war, and the US-led NATO alliance is behind Ukraine's incursion into Russia. Moscow accused that there is irrefutable proof that foreigners are participating with the attacks in Russian Federation, and there is a presence of Western military equipment. Russian presidential aide Yuri Ushakov, in a video message, said that Moscow was not ready to hold peace talks with Ukraine for now, given Kyiv's attack on Russia's Kursk region. Ukraine's incursion, the biggest into Russia by any foreign power since World War II, began on August the 6th, when thousands of Ukrainian soldiers crossed Russia's western border, which was a major embarrassment for the Russian military. Russian President Putin in June said that Russia would end the war in Ukraine only if Kyiv drops its NATO ambitions. But Kyiv takes Moscow's demand as a complete surrender. Russian government officials in a latest statement pointed out that Ukrainian President Zelensky would have never attacked the Kursk region if the United States had not instructed him to. Concluding our review on these major war zones, there is no doubt that the United States of America is responsible for both these conflicts. In the Middle East, it's Washington that provides dollars, bombs to Zionist state to carry out genocide, ethnic cleansing, and assassinations in neighboring countries. Whereas at Ukrainian front, it's the Washington's desire to build NATO's reach till the borders of Russia by admitting Ukraine as NATO's member. But that is not acceptable to Russia. And now, Ukrainian incursion into Russia is a red line. US political class lack the wisdom to understand that a war is going to happen due to their own actions. In the Middle East, the Americans are acting on the directives of completely lawless and rogue state of Israel, whereas Washington dragged Europe in the battlefield by direct incursion of Ukrainian forces. It's totally a disastrous state of affairs. American professor Jeffrey Sachs, in an interview, critically analyzed the global position and viewed that the US don't have a president that perhaps is even physically or mentally capable to stop a world war. He didn't show his mental and physical capacity. He didn't show his judgment to do something different. It is the job of American president first and foremost to stop this war machine of the United States, which is always revving, and it is revving right now. And the job of the president of the United States is to stop it by putting his foot on the brakes so we don't have another world war. Diplomacy failed, and the Washington is a key player in the making of a World War III. Unfortunately, one of the war theaters could be the Middle East, covering all the Muslim nations, and in result, already suppressed states will have to face more wars. That is our topic of discussion today, and to discuss this in our Islamabad studio, we have Mr. Munawwar Ali Maher, who is faculty member, PhD scholar, International Relations, NAMAL, Islamabad. Thank you very much for joining us. With you, we have Dr. Amir Rafiq, who is PhD in Finance and Associate Professor ComStats. Thank you very much, Dr. Amir, for joining us. And joining us from Trinidad and Tobago, West Indies, is Ather Soleimani, who is a religious scholar and also an imam at San Fernando Jamia Masjid. Thank you very much, Mr. Ather Soleimani, for joining us. I'll start with you, Mr. Munawwar. First of all, we have seen diplomacy being ineffective, rather failing in a number of cases. Even forums and organizations like the United Nations have been ineffective. So my question to you is, when it comes to especially Middle East, what we are seeing, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, why do you think that these forums or diplomacy itself has actually failed to resolve all these conflicts?
Thank you for inviting me in your show. First of all, let me contextualize this term diplomacy. Actually, diplomacy is a tool. It is an instrument to conduct your foreign policy. There are two major tools in your foreign policy. One is war, other is diplomacy. Diplomacy is the art of negotiation. It is a peaceful way of settling your issues without going to war. When diplomacy fails, the result is the Ukrainian crisis. When diplomacy fails, the outcome is the Syrian crisis. When diplomacy fails, the result is the turmoil in the Middle East or across the globe that we see on a daily basis. Actually, as far as your question is concerned, diplomacy in Middle East and in all the conflict areas has failed at all levels. There's a diplomacy that you conduct that is called pre-war diplomacy, that you try to deter the war conflict and you try to resolve the issue without going to arms. It failed in case of Ukraine. It failed in case of Middle East and other conflicts around the world. Then there's a diplomacy during the war. There's an eruption of war conflict. Then you try to mitigate its effects. You try to limit its scope.
Right.
When you look at all these conflicts, diplomacy has failed at all levels. And let me put it candidly, that America and the Western countries, they do not want diplomacy to succeed in case of Ukraine, because they have got the golden opportunity to bleed Russia economically and militarily, because conflict is contained, limited to the Ukraine. They are getting killed. They are just only being provided by the arms and hardwares. So Ukrainians, they are bleeding Russia.
Which they are happy to do. US, as you rightly pointed out, the US would want.
And it is a matter of survival for Russian state. It was a matter of survival for the Russian state to attack you. I strongly condemn the aggression. It is against the international laws. Lekin Western countries, especially America, they forced Russia to go to war.
Right. But at the same time, he has rightly pointed out why the US would want Ukraine to win this war. In fact, they have been supporting Ukraine militarily, financially. But Dr. Amir, when we talk about diplomacy, he has defined different stages of diplomacy, but what does it take for any diplomatic effort, or what are those prerequisites for any diplomatic effort to either succeed or fail?
Okay, so the Dr. Sab was very right. Like, what is the purpose of having this diplomatic processes? That is, through negotiation, we try to resolve the issues which can lead us towards violence, towards conflict again. But there are certain limitations as far as the diplomacy is concerned. For me, the major limitation is that we have power imbalance. Like the world in which we are living, there is a huge gap between the countries like who are leading this world. Like that is called the Great Divide between Global South and Global North again. And the Global South basically is under the hegemony of the Global North again. And those powers were in Global North, basically they are leading these conflicts again. So one of the major issues is that we have power imbalance. That's why the diplomacy is not working and is not successful in resolving these issues again. And second major thing is that the willingness again of the global powers again. Okay. So we have two major global powers. The United States is there and the Russia is there again. They are in conflict, and but again they are not directly engaged with each other again. But they are basically supporting the proxy wars in different regions again. So that is, I think, the two main reasons for why the diplomacy is not being successful again.
Right, and obviously being economically strong, being militarily strong, it definitely gives you an upper hand. We'll talk more about this, but moving on to Mr. Atif Soleimani. When it comes to Muslim countries again, 57 Muslim countries, we have seen forums like OIC, organizations like OIC and Arab League, which were actually created to safeguard the interests of all Muslims, all Muslim nations. Why have they failed? In fact, you know, even if we look at this Palestinian conflict, rather than doing something for those Palestinians, raising their voice against Israeli atrocities, we have seen all those organizations or those Muslim countries keeping a mum. Why?
Okay, so first of all, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, it's my honor and it's my privilege to be the part of this very fruitful discussion.
Thank you.
This discussion, I believe, is not only is going to benefit us in this world, but in the life of the hereafter. So, number one, the very first thing that we need to understand, first of all, we have to establish this concept or this idea, or we have to adopt this kind of the attitude that Palestine is going to be free no matter what. If it is through diplomacy, if it is through the discussions, or if it is through table talks, or through any other channels, through any other platforms. So once we have this idea, once we are able to develop this kind of the understanding that our people, our brothers and our sisters, those who are facing the atrocities and this genocide and this mass killing and this mass murder from last 75 or 80 years, they are going to be free. That is for sure. Then and there we will be able to, channelize the diplomacy. Then and there we will be able to open up this discussion.
Right.
The problem is this, in my view, in my opinion, the problem is this, that many of us, we believe that there is no any solution. Because everybody is bombarding us. Everybody is telling us that inna nasa qad jama'u lakum, that the people have gathered against you. So you are going to fail for sure. No matter what you try, no matter what tool you do, no matter what kind of the strategies and what kind of the plannings you have, you are not going to be succeeded. So we have to come out of this shackle. We have to first of all come out of these chains and this limited understanding. We have to believe that indeed, ana inda zanni abdi, as it is the hadith Qudsi, that I am according to the thoughts of my servants, I am according to the assumptions of my servants. We have to have this hope, first of all, that it's going to be successful. We just have to take this courage. We must have that courage to initiate the talks, to initiate the discussions. And then you will see Allah will change our situation. And Allah himself said in the Holy Quran, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. This is a verse that we all know, but the problem is this, that we don't try to understand it, we don't try to believe on it. We just say, okay, this is just a verse, but this is the reality. We have to change ourselves. It is not the issue of the people of the Palestine. It is the zawal, or it is the downfall of the rest of the world, especially the rest of the Muslim Ummah. Because the people of the Palestine, they are already protecting their nation, the Masjid al-Aqsa, subhanallah. They are already registering their name among the successful ones. So now it is the responsibility of the 57 Muslim nations throughout the world that we need to play our part. We need to contribute towards that freedom, towards that success, towards that fath. Because we know this for sure, that Palestine is going to be free. If it is not now, if we are not able to see that freedom, but for sure, inshallah, with the will of Allah, our children are going to see that. It's not far. It's not far. It's not far. It's coming. It's happening. Our children, as a ummah, as a nation, they are going to do the ruku, and they are going to make the sujood on the blessed Masjid al-Aqsa, inshallah.
Right.
So we need to develop, first of all, that understanding that there is the solution, and we have the
So you
solution.
mentioned a couple of points. That number one, Palestine will be free, inshallah. Number two, when you said that we have to come out of this notion that we cannot do anything. But at the same time, at the same time, we have seen those 57 countries. Yes, they have given statements, but they have been mere statements. They haven't taken any practical steps. There is this one country, if we talk about Qatar, trying to make its diplomatic efforts. Again, there are a number of divisions within these Muslim countries. They haven't been able to present a united front when it comes to Palestine. Economically, militarily, a lot of Muslim countries are dependent on the West, especially on the US, which is a major ally of Israel. So how is that going to happen? We'll talk about practicalities. Mr. Munawwar, would you like to add to this?
Actually, I would like to comment on this point of this Middle Eastern crisis with reference to Palestinian issue. Actually, Muslim countries, Muslim world is the part of this problem. We are trying to seek solution in the so-called Muslim Ummah, that we are 57 countries and they can do something to free the Palestinians from the clutches of Israelis. Basically, Muslim countries like Egypt, Jordan and other countries, they are complicit in this genocide. Gaza borders with whom? Egypt. If Gaza has been turned into the largest open-air jail, it is not possible without the support of Egypt. So Muslim countries and most of the major leading countries, they have relations with Israel, and others are going to establish relations with Israel. Muslim world, especially major parts, Muslim countries, they are part of this problem. They are complicit hands and gloves with Israel in this genocide and crime against humanity. And second, we need to de-Islamize this Palestinian issue. We should not view it from the lens of religion, Islam, that our Muslim brothers. We need to project this issue as a humanitarian crisis. There are many Jews, prominent Jews, Westerners, Christians. The largest protest against this in support of Palestinians have been held in the Western world, that we call kafir, not in Pakistan, not in Egypt, not in Saudi Arabia. So those people, those Christians, those Jews, they view the issue from the lens of humanitarianism, from humanity, and we try to just project as Muslims are being killed, project it as a humanitarian crisis. Then mobilize the global support. Now in US there are protests in 150 plus colleges and campuses. The protesters are not Muslims. They are by faith, they are Christians and they are Jews speaking against the Israel.
We'll take a break on this note, and when we come back from the break, we'll take questions from the audience right after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Suno Tonight with Saadia Afzaal. In today's episode, we're discussing, is diplomacy really working when it comes to resolving the major conflicts in the world? And if it's not, then what are the reasons? It's time for some questions from the audience. We'll take first question for Dr. Amir. Go on, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Awaz Ather. I'm from Namal University, Islamabad. My question is that what is the impact of international organizations like UN, European Union on the diplomatic peace efforts?
Right.
Thank you.
Dr. Amir.
Thank you very much for the question. That is very relevant. Okay, United Nations is basically a toothless institution, the institution which can only pass the resolutions, and there is no power with the United Nations to enforce those resolutions. One example is this Kashmir issue, what we are having. They are just having this authority. One more thing regarding United Nations, that is under the hegemony of the United States. Basically, United Nations is United States again. Is a political, or you can say the international wing of United States, basically. So what United States dictates to United Nations, that is being enforced by United Nations again. So one thing should be very clear. Secondly, European Union is under the dominance of United States. This West, basically West is not only the European, the west side of the Europe, rather the North America is also part of that again. So that is basically the Western imperialism, what we are facing since a number of decades again. So that is one of the reasons. Second, when we see the structure of United Nations, that is not democratic again. So just see the countries which are part of the Security Council again. There are 5 permanent members. 3 are from the capitalistic bloc, and 2 are from the socialist bloc again. Where is the representation of the Islamic countries again? So what we are talking about, that whether the Islamic countries are able to resolve the issues which are particularly pertaining to the Islamic countries. No, we do not have any say. So the structure is not democratic. The role of United States is there again. So that is the main issue, is the power imbalance which exists in the world.
Second question for Mr. Ather Soleimani. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zainura and I am from South Waziristan, FATA KPK. Currently pursuing my MPhil degree in International Relations from Namal University, Rawalpindi. I have a question that in a world where state prioritizing self-interest and security, can diplomacy, we can say that diplomacy is just a tool for advancing power?
Okay, just as a tool. Mr. Ather, would you like to respond to this?
It's a good question. This is what I was saying in the beginning, that there are many platforms, there are many mediums that are used for the solution, for the peace, and for the stability in the region. But most of the time, these discussions and these platforms are used to fool us, to fool the rest of the world. And it doesn't give us any beneficial results or any fruitful results. So end of the day, what works is our sincere intention, is our unified statement, is our unified effort, is our unified endeavors, where the Muslims country throughout the world, they come together under one banner, under one flag, and they release the statements, and they pass the statements, and they come together that, okay, this is the problem, and we need to have to make sure that we come out with a solution for this. And this is something, this is very unfortunate, that we talk about the Muslim Ummah, we talk about the Muslim nation, and there are only few people we can count. There are few lands or few communities or the few countries, those who are playing their part or those who are playing their role. But when we look at the West, when we look at the European countries, I believe they are more vital. They are more vital. They are more vibrant. They are more active for the freedom of the Palestine. They are more active freedom of the people of the Gaza, because their own natural instinct. We don't have to recite the verses of the Holy Quran in front of them. Nobody has to tell them, okay, this is what is happening and that is what is happening. Remember, end of the day, they have their own conscience. They have their feelings. They have their own understanding. They have their own mind and their soul. So their own natural instinct is actually pushing them, is actually forcing them to speak against this atrocity, to speak against this genocide. And so that is why they are doing more job, better, endeavors and the efforts for the betterment of the people of the Palestine and for the betterment of the people of the Gaza.
Another question, please. Yes, go on.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sayyid Lara Basan. I am from Dera Ismail Khan, and currently I am the student of BS Economics in Qaid-e-Azam University. So my question is that how does American diplomatic approach to the Palestinian-Israel conflict influence the relations with Iran, considering the latest support for Palestinian groups and opposition to US policy in the region? I'm talking about Iran. Is they diplomatic in this issue?
All these states, they are ruthless in pursuit of their national interest. There's no morality in the pursuit of international interest. So Iran is also doing the same. Iran is trying to undercut the power of its competitors in the region. I need not to name them. So they do use the Palestinian issue. They do use the proxies and non-state actors in the Middle East to their own advantage, to undercut the American influence in the Middle East, to undermine Israel and to achieve their national interest. Keep one thing in your mind, that there's no morality, no principles in international conflict, international relations. International relations, they are driven by hardcore national interest, regardless of any concern for international laws or morality or humanity. West, they used to claim, they used to be the champions of the human rights. So now this genocide is unfolding in the full daylight in front of the Western media and Western world. The Western countries and governments, they are supporting the Israel. They are providing the weapons to Israel. Israel cannot continue this war without the Western support. So the champions of human rights, who used to teach us human rights, they are complicit in this genocide. So nations, they love their national interest. They like human rights, but they love their national interest.
National interest. Right. On this note, I have to go for a break. We're discussing the role of diplomacy in resolving the major conflicts in the world. We'll take a break here, and after the break, we'll take more questions from the audience as well. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Suno Tonight with Saadia Afzaal. We are taking questions from the audience. In audience, we have different university students who are always given this opportunity to ask the panel their relevant questions. Yes, please.
My question is from Sir Atif Sulmani. I am a student of Peace and Conflict Studies studying in National Defense University, Islamabad. So you have talked about that the countries, the Muslim countries, they are not talking about, they are not raising voice, they are not using resources for the Palestinian conflict. But what about their own internal situation? When we see Johan Galton in Peace and Conflict Studies, the father of Peace and Conflict Studies, he always first emphasize on the internal affairs. We see the example of Bangladesh, we see example of our own country, we see the political crisis ongoing. So how can we help the ongoing Palestinian issue when we have the issue of Kashmir? How can we help the other issues? Thank you.
Right. Yes, Mr. Atif.
Once again, very good question. And this is the main problem. This is the main problem that in Urdu we say nafsa nafsi, that we have our own situations, we have our own problems. And for some time, for some personal benefits, for our personal interest, we totally ignore the problems and the issues of others. We became very insensitive. We became so senseless sometimes and heartless as well, that only when the bandit or when the thief is at our doorsteps, then and there we scream, then and there we shout, then and there we yell. And when the same criminals and those aggressors and those oppressors, they are actually polluting and they are showing their brutality to others, we are remaining we are observing the silence. There is no any movement, there is nothing like that. So once again, you know, it's all about how much you have that understanding in your mind and how much conscious you have and how much willingness and how much that readiness you have within yourself that you want to change, you want to bring some sort of changing and you want to bring some sort of difference with your presence. And for that reason, you know, I must commend the Suno News and all those who are behind this beautiful initiative, those who are behind this beautiful venture, those who are trying to bring at least the awareness to the youth. And youth we have to change, because many of us, we don't even know what is happening in the Palestine. We don't even know what was happening from last 70 years. We only are understanding what is happening since 7th of October. So this is something very commendable. And I believe, personally, I believe, that this is going to contribute towards the betterment of the hereafter. We may be thinking on the day of resurrection that our salah, our hajj, our fasting is going to rescue us, and we never know. Allah may reject and Allah may, you know, say, okay, this is not going to be acceptable. Rather, you are standing against the batil. You are standing against those oppressors and those aggressors and those who are doing the persecution, your some words are going to rescue you in the life of the hereafter.
Inshallah.
So
This is the forum which we have got. At least we can talk about it, and that's what we are trying to do. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Two
My
last
name is
questions.
Muhammad Fahad Javed. I am studying BSIR from Namal Rawalpindi. And my question is that as we discussed that the diplomacy is not working in that all the situation, and especially in the Muslim Ummah, the Islamic countries, then my question is that how can diplomacy balance the competing interests and priorities in peace negotiations?
Right. Would you like to respond to this, Dr.
Yes,
Ramiz?
so diplomacy is the major thing which can resolve all these conflicts, issues. But whenever we talk about OIC or the Islamic countries, again, one thing is, whenever we want to do something, two major things are required. One is the willingness, and the second one is capacity. If still we have the willingness to engage in this process to resolve these issues, whether we are having the capacity to resolve these issues, that is basically the question mark again. And whenever we talk about the capacity of a country, it means whether the country is politically and economically independent or not. Just take the example of Pakistan. We are atomic power. Whether our economy is independent, whether we have economic dependence, yes, we have economic dependence again. So whenever a country is not economically independent, in that case political independence is also at stake again. So when we see all these countries, we see that these countries are not politically and economically independent again. And these are the two major things as far as sovereign nation state is concerned again.
Absolutely.
So politics and economy, this is a political economy. If you're not independent in these two sense, in that case, that is very much difficult. Just take the example of BRICS again. So BRICS has been led by two major countries like Russia and China. Basically, are leading BRICS again, and BRICS are basically is having major weight again against the U.S. imperialism. Have you heard about this de-dollarization? Who is leading in the process of de-dollarization? That is BRICS. And what is the major reason? The two major economies, like Russian economy, the Chinese economy, they are politically and economically independent. That's why they are giving tough times to the U.S. hegemony again.
Right. Yes. Yes. Your question, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Masroor Ahmed, and I'm from Namal University. My question is that can diplomacy resolve the long-standing conflicts such as US, Russia, Pakistan, India, and Israel, Palestine?
You gave 3 examples. You
From
want to
me?
respond? Yes, please.
You need to keep one thing in your mind, that diplomacy does not operate in isolation. It is supposed to be backed up by your other elements of power, like military power, like economic power. Economic power is very key in this era of geo-economy. Now, there are countries, tiny countries, let me exemplify, like Qatar. It's an energy superpower. It is a greater role. What you say, it punches above its weight in Middle East and across the world in the conflicts. So if you say diplomacy, what is diplomacy? Diplomacy is just to persuade the other party to come around and to agree. If the other party is stronger than you militarily, how you are going to persuade them without any power, especially hard power, military power? So you need to combine hard power, what you call it, military power, with the soft elements of power.
One last question from any of our female students.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is that can diplomacy truly address the deep-seated complex issues like nationalism and extremism, because they often have like strong emotions and conflicting identities, or are these issues too ingrained and sensitive to be like effectively managed through diplomacy, or do we need any else approach to solve these kind of issues?
Right. Any one of you who wants to respond? Yes.
Diplomacy is the best tool to address any issue because diplomacy avoids war. diplomacy is the useful way of resolving any issue. So it is the best tool. It is not perfect, but it is the best among the available options. As far as extremism and nationalism concerned, basically they are national issues. When they spill over into your bordering countries, or they have impact on in the region or at the global level, they become transnational issues. Most of the issues like nationalism, subnationalism, sectarianism, extremism, they are national issues. You are supposed to respond them within your own country. Like terrorism in Pakistan also originates from Afghanistan. Then you have to engage your diplomacy and mobilize your diplomacy to talk to Afghanistan that eliminate those terrorists hiding in Afghanistan. Then it becomes transnational or international.
You cannot expect any other country to resolve your own issues, internal issues. I have to wind up here. Mr. Munawwar Ali Maher, Dr. Amir Rafiq, Mr. Ather Suleimani, thank you very much for joining me on the show today, and thank you for your questions as well. That's all for tonight. Good night and Allah Hafiz.